Welcome to God Talk Improv, a show where a rocket scientist and a medical doctor, who is also my pastor, talk about current topics in science and faith in an unplugged fashion in 15 minutes. So let's get started. Dr. Andy, welcome to the show, and please give us a topic.
Yeah, hey Doug. Today we're going to talk about Democrat politics. Now, we've spent time saying Jesus wouldn't be a Democrat. We've talked about the Republicans. We talked a lot about Donald Trump and Cruz and all those guys. We haven't said much about the Democrat politicians running for president. However, there is another side, and they are running, and so we do need to mention them. And these guys have been in the news lately. So I think today what we want to talk about is from our Christian worldview, from our theological perspective. Let's look at Obama, Hillary, Sanders, the main players out there in the Democrat Party running the hill, and say, what's going on with these guys? And, you know, the point is, we have the presupposition, and everybody probably knows this that listen to us, but we favor a smaller government, right? Libertarian type, I don't know. I'm really more of an independent that leans towards libertarian, but a libertarian candidate can never seem to get elected.
Well, and everybody knows that I cannot stand Republicans, but I like them far more than the liberals.
Right. So, and that's usually what I do. I usually vote for them because I don't want the Democrat. But I would really prefer to have a candidate who, like Ron Paul, who ran the last cycle,
right?
Who really was basically a libertarian in Republican clothes. He really wanted a small government that handled defense and handled basic safety net issues and major foreign nations, dealing with foreign policy, but not controlling your life and cutting into your freedom. Because my argument is, when we get a big government and we get a big, clumsy Democrat government that is too big and too much red tape, it always cuts into our freedom. And we're going to talk about how that happens in several of these.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And
sure.
My thing of government is I want to build a government based totally upon the U.S. Constitution, which
right.
you would think it would be, but it's not, and the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a government built upon those two things should be, the ideal of the U.S. government.
And we don't want a theocracy. We want to be clear about that. We want freedom. Again, freedom.
Right.
Freedom means you have libertarian freedom to choose within constraints. I mean, we don't have absolute freedom to do anything. You can't go out and shoot somebody or yell fire in a theater, but you have freedom within a range of constitutional mandates and within the law.
Well, and I said Martin Luther King Jr. because he said treat everybody, no matter what their color is, treat them exactly the same. So that's exactly the way I would do it. So you've got these Democrats, and we'll get into it. I'll see how they favor some people, special interest groups, over other people. So
that's part of the problem with it, yeah.
Yes.
And really, a big part of that is they're always going to go back and say, well, we're trying to compensate for something that happened in the past. But the problem with that is you can't quantify it.
Martin Luther King didn't say that.
Right.
He said you should be treated this way. He didn't say, and by the way, look in the past.
And then go back and try to... Because, the problem is you can't quantify how much and how long you should do that. And you cannot ever make everything completely equal, because we could always go back and find something farther in the past where we were discriminated against. We could just keep going back and back and say, there's no end to that. Let's go forward.
And I hear about white privilege all the time. And I'm thinking, okay, my mother came from the poorest family in the poorest county, in the poorest town in the whole United States, right? And my wife's father came from the poorest. The only difference was my family had floors, where hers didn't even have floors, had wood floors. So I mean, we came from the poorest families there are. And so how am I white privileged? By coming from the poorest of the poor.
Right. I mean, the problem is that there are certainly racial differences, and I'm not trying to ignore that, and there are. But if people want to move forward and be blind to race, then you have to move forward and be blind to race. If you do it and build in constraints to try to make things equal from the past problem, then you're going to continue to propagate different types of racism. Even reverse discrimination is being done now.
Oh, I know.
The problem is you just need to go forward and say, let's just put the color issue to rest. Now, obviously you can't force people to do that, but the law should fuel that movement. Now, one of the first things is in the news this week was Obama, had his crying episode over Sandy Hook. And I don't know.
A grown man crying.
I don't know what that was about, if that was just an emotional outburst or if he really was that broken up about it. But the main thing about this is not that as much as the executive action that he signed into law over gun control or over the Second Amendment, right? The First Amendment is freedom of speech. The Second Amendment is freedom to bear arms, or to prevent, it allows us to carry guns, to own guns, and he wants to limit that. See, again, freedom is going to be limited by the Democrat system, and they're going to limit your ability to have guns. So he signed this in. Now, an executive action means he signed something without going through Congress.
Right. The Congress is ruled. Congress has got more Republicans in there because the government, the will of the people elected more Republicans who are going to oppose this, and so
he knows it'll get blocked. If it goes through.
What he's doing is he's effectively ignoring the majority of the people of the United States to go to ignore them and do what he wants. That's being a king.
Okay, there you go. Now let's talk about the philosophical problems, the political philosophy that's problematic with executive action. Okay. You just said it. We did not elect a king. We don't have a kingship system. We have a president who's supposed to work in conjunction with limited powers, right? The whole reason for 3 different parts of power is it distributes the power between a president, a Congress, and the judicial system. And the Founding Fathers knew they needed to do that because absolute power corrupts absolutely. So that's why we don't have a king. And you know that I often say this in my sermons, or I've mentioned it several times. We all want a king to rule us rightly, God. The problem, we have that built in. The problem is every human king there's ever been has failed. Every single human king has failed. They've become corrupt, or they failed in some way, and they don't work. Human kings don't work. Human kingdoms never work because of our fallen nature. Humans always become corrupt because of the power that they have. If you take the power away from them, you can't get anything done. If you give them power, they become corrupt. This has happened in the papacy. It's happened with the Catholic Church. It's happened with many nations. And so Obama is signing that into order to limit our ability to use guns because that's what he wants to do, not what the people want.
Well, good thing he's only in office for another year. So the executive order will be
it could be reversed.
Reversed by a Republican.
Yeah.
I don't know what Hillary do.
She'd probably keep the same thing. I would think if she's the president. Now, so that's Obama this week. Now, he's not running for anything, thank goodness, but Hillary is. And there are several things about her. And the first thing about her was that this was in the news this week for aliens.
Aliens?
And he was asked in New Hampshire on the trail. It was a legitimate question from a newspaper. Okay,
right.
Said, what do you think about the question of aliens and disclosure? If you're president, are you going to disclose the truth? They talk about disclosure. They want disclosure. And I'm not commenting on that as far as a UFO standpoint. I'm just saying she said, this was paraphrasing what she said. I don't have it in front of me, but she essentially said, I think that there are aliens, and I believe we've been visited, and likely they're among us now. And, of course, then they came back later and say, well, she had tongue-in-cheek or whatever. But I don't think so, because if you look back through the debates, there are several debates. Tim Russert asked that question of Dennis Kucinich and of Obama when he was running, and they talked about this a little bit. Bill Clinton has talked about the alien question on the nighttime shows. Several other candidates have talked about this. Hillary's talked about it before. She is interested in this, so I'm not condemning her for it. I'm just saying she brought it up, then she kind of tried to pull it back. I think she did it to get a press, boom, because people are interested in this, and they think, well, she's going to disclose the truth about aliens in Area 51.
All right. What I done is I went to Hillary's website, and I tried to find something on her.
Something that's positive.
Something
that
positive.
you like?
I don't want to go in there and say,
support
by
her?
golly, I'm a
Right.
I'm a
Libertarian,
libertarian.
Republican.
And I just can't
So
stand.
what could you find that you liked about Hillary's plan?
Really? I mean, it was a struggle.
Did you find anything?
I found one thing, and that
What is
was
that?
an automatic voter registration at the age of 18.
Okay, and that's
as soon as you turn
positive?
18, you're automatically registered to vote. You don't have to go in and do anything
something
special.
out,
Fill
right.
something out or show ID. You're automatically
Sounds
registered.
reasonable. Yeah.
Not unless what if you're an illegal alien? I mean, what if you're
Well, the aliens are here, apparently, she said. So they're coming from the planet.
So apparently, yeah. Since you turn 18, you don't have to be a U.S. citizen. I don't know how that's going to work, and it says it's going to be on the internet system. So wherever you move around, they'll track
follow
you.
Well,
They'll
they
follow-
want to track you, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's one thing. But let's talk about some of the negative things. What does she want to do with Social Security?
Well, everything. That's probably another. Everything expands under her. Everything
Okay.
is so.
Every government thing.
Every government thing expands. But we're going to make the wealthiest pay their fair share. That was it. Everything goes
Yeah.
back to make the wealthy pay their fair share. So we're going to expand Social Security, but no.
Well, how are they going to pay for that, though? The problem is,
it's-
sure, I like that. Great, expand it. The problem is, where's the money going to come from? It's already getting close to broke. So
Well, what they do is right now, if you make more than $110,000, you don't pay into Social Security after $110,000. So if you are the wealthiest person, you pay only up to $110,000,
110.
and then after that, you don't pay into it because you're not going to collect it back out.
right.
So it's supposed to be, Social Security is supposed to be, you pay into it and you're going to get that much out. But there's
That's never what happens.
well, because people are taking, they've expanded Social Security, and people are taken out of Social Security that never paid into it.
Sure.
And or you got the other way is where my wife paid into it and she can't take it, can't get anything out of it because
Well,
she's a teacher.
It's basically a Ponzi scheme.
Well-
and that's what it is. But
Yes.
I know they probably had good intentions when they formed it, but and now how do you ever end it? But anyway, she's going to expand it. She's going to make it. She's going to keep the
So-
age at 65, and she's
So
going to
more
expand
people can get on. Yeah, and that's again. There was another thing about 12 weeks of paid family and medical leave.
it. Okay.
Who pays for it? If
Right. Well, it's a good idea, but who pays again?
well, that's again.
And that's going to be mandated for all business owners.
All
Probably the
bus-
businesses are going to pay for it.
well, she
Right?
in the same sentence, she goes, "Well, we're going to make the wealthiest pay their fair share."
Okay.
So I don't know.
Probably
that-
the business owners.
I don't know
or
if that means that if I'm a small business and somebody wants to go on medical leave, that they're
You
going
have
to
to
go
pay for it.
go to the government to get.
No,
so that
I'd say
gonna-
they're going to make you pay for it.
Well, that,
That's my guess. If
But,
you're a business owner, you're one of the rich.
yeah. Now, one of the things I mentioned about Martin Luther King Jr., he said, "Look everybody equally." Well,
Mm-hmm.
in her website, she's going to LGBT
Going to
equity.
increase, yeah. So she favors the LGBT group and is really going to promote that lifestyle.
And we've
right?
had problems where, you have boys with a penis who wants to go to a girl's bathroom.
Yeah, right.
And while they're changing and getting ready to go
Yeah.
into sports or whatever, now you got
Right,
somebody
right.
who says that
Is
they're
sexually a boy, yeah.
yeah, sexually a boy.
This is a problem. We need to do a whole show on this issue. We're getting close on time. And also she wants to expand Obamacare.
yes, expand
Now,
Obamacare.
the problem with all of this is the Constitution is what this ought to be based on, right?
Right.
And what we're seeing instead is just a really big government. And Bernie Sanders, he wants to run the country like Norway.
Norway and
Sweden.
Sweden, yeah.
So
which
he
is a
wants to
socialist.
make us into a socialistic European country. That's
Right.
a very different view of this
Well,
country.
he only looks at Norway and Sweden. He doesn't look at Venezuela.
Right.
So
It's a very different kind of country, Doug. I don't know if we're ready for that kind of thing.
No, well, and all this is based upon the very last sentence of the Constitution that said the government program should be, as needed, necessary and justified.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, what's necessary and justified? It could be anything,
Right.
So everything in the Constitution is very specific. Then they go, oh, and everything that's necessary.
Right.
So that's where all welfare and everything goes on those two
words,
two words.
Problem is, though, that what we have to make clear about this is when we go towards a socialistic big government, it limits our freedom and it results in a very different country than the one we've lived in. And I think a lot of people don't understand that or don't seem to care. I don't know which, but we're headed towards being more like a European nation and much less like what the fathers wanted us to be, the founding fathers. So that's where we're headed if we go with the Democrat. I hope things don't go that way, but it may very well. But anyway, first, this is God Talk, where we rightly divide the line between science and faith.
And this is God Talk Improv, where we mix up science and faith in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Please visit our website at godtalk.com. Our audio files can be found on iTunes, SoundCloud, and many other podcast platforms. You can find all of our God Talk videos by searching Dr. Andy and Doug on YouTube. Please visit our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/Dr. Andy and Doug. Thank you for listening.